right, guys, we have a guest today. Her name is Shannon Jones, and she is the author of Why Do I Exist? And so we're going to have a wonderful conversation around her book and her story that goes with this book. So we're going to dive right in. You wrote the book, How Do I Exist? Um, and you mentioned in the beginning of the book, you kind of had this epiphany with Jerry McGuire. And for those of you who've watched the movie, it's a classic. Many of you have probably watched it. Tell us, how did this whole journey begin for you? And tell us about this Jerry Maguire epiphany that you had.
Okay, well, thank you again for having me. So I was watching the movie Jerry Maguire, and of course, there's a scene where one of the characters, he just is talking about what he wants to do in life and, how he wants to do more. And, he writes this plan of how he's going to come up with this goal. And once he writes the plan, he gets extremely excited. He jumps up and is like, wow, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so for me, I used that example because that was kind of an aha moment for myself. I was sleeping, and at the time I wasn't working. I was a stay-at-home mom, had two degrees underneath my belt, master's degree, and of course my BA degree. I had all of this education. I have all of these goals that I wanted to accomplish, but for some reason they never came to fruition.
Yeah.
And so I was at a low point in my life, wanting more for myself and for my family. Just recently had a child, so I wanted more. But I didn't know how to go about doing that. And so just one night, I'm just sleeping and I'm just awakened, in the middle of my, dream. Like I just hear a voice say, get up. And so, I ignored it because it was 3:00 in the morning and I'm tired and it was cold. And I just remember, no, I don't want to get up. But then I heard it again and I adhered to, what I heard. When I sat down, I, got a pen and paper, and it was just like all of these ideas just started to pour out on the paper so quickly that I couldn't even write fast enough. I was just writing and writing, and it was just pouring out. And so, in the end, I realized that this was a story that God had put in my heart to share with other people, because I think everyone has a story to tell, and it can really inspire someone who may be experiencing the same emotions that you are experiencing. And that one word or one piece of text can really change their perspective. And so that was the reason, that was my aha moment. And that's what got me to writing the story.
Yes. So we talk a lot about, obviously, this podcast has evolved, but we talk about being healthy for our purpose. And I think that's why it's kind of important that we're kind of having this conversation about, why do I exist? What are the gifts and the purposes that God is putting in me? Because ultimately, that's the essence of life. We're trying to fulfill and live out God's gift. So can you tell us a little bit about the story? I know you talked about the idea that you had to kind of come to a conclusion that you knew what God was putting in your heart to do, but then you had to move on to this idea of actually investing in yourself to make this thing happen. So tell us, just kind of walk us through the journey that you had in figuring out, why do I exist, and how did these things unfold?
Yeah. So for one, I came up with some steps because at one point I went through that process of trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be discouraging when lots of doors are closing and what you have in your head set to do doesn't manifest.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the place that I was at that moment. Things that I was trying to do on my own
Mm-hmm.
wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was the time where I said, okay, well, I'm going to remove myself from the driving wheel and let God take control. And so what
Mm-hmm.
I found in that time is that the first step, I had to examine my situation. I had to examine my life. Was I in a place where God wanted me to be, for one? But most importantly, I wanted to make sure that I can live out the purpose that God had placed me here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to examine and make sure that I was in the right lane, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was what's prompted the start. But then the next step, I started to, I call it my exploration season.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to explore, okay, what were some of the things that when I was younger came naturally to me?
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I started to think about how when I was younger, I didn't have a fear in the world. I can just go up and I can just speak and I can, talk in front of people and I can just get up and, do a dance or performance. My natural gift, I discovered, was performing and speaking. And for some time, that was who I was. But then it shifted when doors didn't open. Because when I went to college, my goal was to be a news anchor.
Yeah.
But God wanted to use my speaking in a different light. And so, at the time when you're going through it, it doesn't, it feels like, wow, I really wanted to do this career, but, God has a better plan for you, how he wants to use your purpose. And so exploration and then execution, once you get the idea of, okay, I now know what purpose I want to fulfill or want to fulfill God's plan. How am I going to make this happen? So it's important to have a plan of attack. For me, when I was writing the book, I stayed consistent. I did not let any type of outside sources distract me. I wrote the book in 2 weeks, but I was consistently, I had a time that I wanted to meet. I had a goal that I wanted to write, within that time frame. And so I just kept at it, just being consistent with what you are trying to achieve, and understanding that you're going to take some hits. You're everything is not going to go as planned. You're going to have roller coasters. You're going to have some dips. You're going to have some doors closed. But as long as the plan is consistent with God's plan, you got to continue the journey.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead. You mentioned the journalism, and what popped in my mind is, and we talk a lot about this idea of knowing your why, because that's kind of what sustains you. And you talk a little bit about what your inspiration was. You talked a little bit about the Green Monster, now that you mentioned the journalism, when you found out about that. But how did your why evolve, and how did that actually help you to get to that point where you felt you were living in purpose?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to the execution and it goes back to the exploration stage, because you have to be careful. So the green-eyed monster that I mentioned in the book is trying to find a career path that's lucrative. And so in that exploration stage, you want to, I want you to ask the question, um, if you could pick, if every career paid the same salary,
Mm-hmm.
what career would you do?
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to kind of look in it at a different lens,
Mm-hmm.
because for me, you can get caught up very quickly in trying to make money that you go off task on what you really was called to do. And so
Mm-hmm.
I went on a roller coaster. I mean, I was in marketing,
Yeah.
I was in a lot of different career paths, to where, I currently, I feel that I am living the purpose that God has placed me to be. I'm
Mm-hmm.
in the helping industry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also speaking on the platform that, God has wants me to speak on. Um, and so it really has been full circle, for me. Um, and it's something that I encourage, your listeners to
Mm-hmm.
really dive into, and not to be distracted
Mm-hmm.
by um, by money,
Mm-hmm.
and really stay focused on what it is that you are called to do. Because I tell people that I counsel, the money is going to come, but if it's lucrative and you're not enjoying it, and
Mm-hmm.
you are just going in and day out for the income,
Mm.
um, it takes away the joy in what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. And guys, we really want to bring Shannon on because we talk a lot about getting healthy for your purpose, but there's some people who struggle with figuring out this purpose. And I feel this is why Shannon's book, which we have here, Why Do I Exist, helps you, that once you have that why and you're like, I'm getting healthy so I can live out my purpose. For those of you who are struggling with, well, how do I break this down? It's really a good way to kind of explore these things. So another thing you talk about, Shannon, is one thing you just mentioned is that sometimes you have to try so many things before it's not always, you don't always find it in the one thing you try. Sometimes it's going to be multiple things that you try and fail and succeed. And there's this dance. But you also talked about the concept of doubt that comes in, because sometimes when you don't hit the nail on the head right away, when you're seeking purpose and you're praying, God, what is it that you want me to do? I'm getting healthy for my purpose, but now where do you want me to put my energy? And sometimes doubt comes in. And you also talk about the naysayers and the haters that come in that can derail you from this process. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I mean, that is a struggle of just life. You know, everyone has doubt. Everyone second guesses themselves at some point in your life. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
Is making sure that you don't stay in that place. And so one of my other steps, to rediscovering and finding your purpose, is
Mm-hmm.
encouragement. And encouragement is when you have cheerleaders. So in the book, I talk about, picking those people that are going to help you through this process, because you are going to have those moments. There's so many instances where I experienced that and wanted to stop and wanted to give up. Um, but because I had healthy connections in my life, they have been holding me up and, just encouraging me and being honest,
Mm-hmm.
and that's important. That's an important combination to have when you're trying to figure out who your cheerleaders are going to be as you go through this journey. They
Mm.
need to be people that are going to be trustworthy. Not everyone is going to, agree with some of they're going to probably challenge you. And that's a good thing, because you want to make sure you're putting your best effort forward. No yes men.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have people that really care about you
Mm.
and the work that you're trying to produce. So doubt is okay. I mean, it's natural, but staying in that season is not. And so
Yeah.
that's where having those connectors, those cheerleaders to, you know, to continue to uplift you is powerful. Also, you know, I listen to, you know, your show. I have been for quite some time, and finding something positive to encourage you along the way is huge. You know, you was very helpful, you know, during a season of change for me with my health, and wanting to lower blood pressure and just, you know, be a healthier version of myself so that I can live out the goals that God has planned and purpose for me. I can't do that if I have a unhealthy way of living. And so finding, you know, your cheerleaders, some, you know, if you have people in your family, or, you know, you don't have, you know, so those connectors too, they can also be people that you listen to, podcasts and other people that don't have to directly be in your line of work. So you can find these types of people as well to help you to boost the self-confidence.
Yeah. And I think one of the things you talk about in the book that you could kind of go a little deeper, I know the Bible talks about, you know, stirring up the gifts within you. And one of the major ways that you say that you really could tap into your purpose is by really analyzing those gifts. I know you talked a little bit about it by going back to your childhood and said, what comes easy to me? But what would you tell someone who is trying to figure out what their gifts are and trying to tap into that? Because you talk about tapping into talents and gifts. So tell us how someone would go about tapping in there for that.
So as I said before, I honestly just taking time away from media and social media and take 15 minutes of quiet time. You know, this can be done in the morning, this can be done, you know, at night, but carving out time for you to focus is key, because that's when you're going to hear from God and you're going to hear what he's trying to say to you. So for me, when I was going through this pattern of trying to figure out, okay, I can do this, but what is it that you want me to do? I had to, like I said, think about things that came natural to me that I didn't have to work extremely hard to do. That's a very clear indicator of what path you should be taking. I use my daughter, you know, she is a great problem solver. You know, I give her directions to anything to build, and, you know, she has that brain to naturally, it just comes quickly to her. Whereas for me, I try to work hard at it. It is not sticking. So as you're going through your life and you kind of look at where you are today, you know, just kind of sitting back and quietly thinking, okay, well, you know, what are some of the things that if I was to go out here and just do something, it would just come quickly. I wouldn't even have to put a lot of effort. Now, once you do discover that talent, that's where the work starts, because you have to work it. You know, you can't just say, okay, I'm great at this, and not put forth the effort and the work. But I really encourage people to spend time with themselves, praying and asking God to guide them with the answers. And just, you can also talk to people that you trust and ask them, hey, you know, you've known me for such and such years. What are some things that you may have observed that I do well? And kind of, these are people that you trust, you know, kind of going to them and asking them for some feedback too, doing a little mini interview of an interview about me. What about me, you know, that is significant, that can help you in that self-discovery.
Yes, awesome. And so I think, to kind of bring how you kind of bring everything together at the ending of the book, you bring it back to Jerry McGuire as we started off this episode, and you talk about this idea of seizing the moment. Um, and really, I guess, listening to God's voice, but actually seizing the moment. Can you just tell us about what the seizing the moment means? And how have you seized the moment? Like, how did this all come full circle for you with writing this book, your journey, and just finding why do you exist?
So seizing the moment means that when the opportunity presents itself, you act on it. You take that leap of faith to carry out what it is that is planned. It may work out for you. It may be a challenge. It may not pan out, but you tried. You seized the moment. You were obedient to what it was that was given to you to accomplish. So for me, seizing the moment, I took a chance in writing and listening to the voice of God and writing out this story. And it has contributed to, who I am as a person. We have an expiration date. We have a set time to fulfill what it is that, we're purposed here for. And so seizing the moment has to do with time. Time is of the essence. Time is finite. Time doesn't wait. And so knowing this, you have to be cognizant of that, utilize it, capture it, and make sure that you are providing the services that God wants you to provide for his people. Yeah. And, I was able to take this leap of faith, write this story, and it has really tremendously blessed. I get emails from people just saying how they have been blessed by it. But for me, it's not the accolades. It's the fact that they're now stepping into what God wants them to do, and they have direction and they have clarity, and that brings me joy because the story that I share with them has encouraged them. And for me, I'm now I write the story for them. I am also helping, like I told you in the beginning, I'm in the helping field. So I am a therapist, and I work with other people to help them discover, their purpose, and, help them to figure out what it is that they should be doing. And so, although I started out wanting to be a news anchor and be in the limelight and, do stories, God is using the voice in a different format. And I'm very happy to be in this format. Yeah. And I'm sure he protected me from a lot, by not going into that particular industry. I'm nothing against that industry, but for me, I think he had something, a different message for me to display.
Yeah. So what would you tell someone if you wanted to just say, if there's one thing you message that you really wanted to have this reader know, and for the audience that's listening, they might be curious about the book, to get it, or even just to figure out their purpose. What is that main message that you want to just let the listeners know about why do I exist?
To not fear, to listen to the voice of God, and be ready to leap. Challenges is going to happen. That's okay. It's a part of the process. but don't be afraid to try. I think a lot of people that go through this process or go through life not trying. And so you never know what you could have accomplished. And so when you stand at the pearly gates, you know, you want to hear God say, you know, my faithful servant, well done. And so you don't want to just waste your life just going through the motions of the days. So listen, be ready to leap and not have fear, and just try.
Yeah.
You'll surprise yourself.
Yeah.
You will surprise yourself in so many things, especially if you're doing God's work. How can you not succeed when he wants you to do that?
Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you, Shannon, for that. So let us know what's going on in the future for you. Where can people find you on social media? Where can they purchase the book? What's in the pipeline for you? What's coming up?
So I'm continuing to speak around. I'm increasing my speaking engagements. Really trying to help people figure out their purpose. I have a seminar that is called Finding Your Purpose. I also have my own practice as a therapist, and I also work with people in that platform with helping them to discover their purposes and other things that may be challenging them or preventing them from taking that step. In terms of where you can find me, I am on Instagram. I'm a newbie on that, but my name is Shannon Speaks, Shannon_Speaks. So you can find me on Instagram there, as well as my website is shannonmoxleyjones.com. So shannonmoxleyjones.com, all one word.
Awesome. And you could get your book on Amazon. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
You can go there as well on Amazon to get a copy of the book.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shannon, for coming on and inspiring our guest on this topic of purpose. I think it's such an important topic that everyone has to face at one point in their lives and really hash it out to maximize it. So thank you so much for coming on.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.